Patrick Gossage was Pierre Trudeau's press secretary for many, many years. That was many, many years ago. And he's been in journalism for years and years and years. He knows media and knows it for generations in Canada. And he joins me right now because I want to read to you a quote by Susan Riley, who's an Ottawa insider. She's been there for years and years.
I knew her, yeah.
And this is her title. Whether his harshness is impulsive or strategic, it's invidious, referring to Poilievre. So there, right in her title, is she's laying out her judgment, saying he's a nasty man, which is striking with a lot of people, because I speak to a lot of people, they say, I know Trudeau's government is terrible, but especially women, I don't like Poilievre. I just don't like him, because of headlines like this. He's invidious.
Well,
What's going on with journalists?
Well, certainly in the old days, when there were senior and respected journalists who set the tone in Ottawa, of which there are none left. None,
right.
Not one. And they're all young, and they all went to journalism school, and they're all schooled in we have a government to defeat, and they feel that advocacy journalism is perfectly all right, and it's not.
Susan Riley and Delacour will be glad to be called young by you.
Well, that's true.
But I mean, they are no longer spring chickens. So is the quality of journalism down throughout the generations?
I mean, I do believe it is. And I mean, poor old Susan, both Susans, they have to go a certain distance to kind of toe the line, which is very much antagonistic journalism.
And yet,
but
their publications are paid for by the government.
Well, they aren't.
The Toronto Star would not be in business but for money from the government.
Yeah, but
the Hill Times would not be in business without a subsidy from the government.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that the journalists are, pro-government automatically. That's
if you're not, you'll get a call.
That's unprovable. And
there's a Liberal MP who actually wrote the National Post. There's a Liberal senator who actually wrote the Hill Times. Change these stories. We're the ones who are paying you.
And it happened?
Yes. Not with the National Post, because they said stick it. Hill Times changed the story.
Well, I mean, the fact is it's the basic quality of journalism, and it's the insistence that instead of just covering the antagonism and the hate that goes on and the conflict, I mean, it's much easier to write about conflict and hate than it is to write about policy.
Oh, good point.
And they don't, and journalism the kind of journalism we have in Ottawa could force a discussion instead of how bad the other person is. What are their policies and are they useful? And I mean, Poilievre has gotten away with no policies for, what is it, like 2 or 3 years now. He's got away with slogans and nothing behind them. And that's the journalist's fault, in my view. And of course, he hates journalists and won't be, he's actually cut journalists off.
And maybe with good reason.
That's a whole new thing. I mean, no government that we were ever involved with would knowingly cut off journalists who should be their vehicle to reach the public.
Patrick Gossage, you're so old school. Thank you.
Old school, thank you.
3 minutes. To those of you who have subscribed and donated, a heartfelt thank you. You're keeping us on the air. If you're watching and you haven't, please try to do so, because 4 years ago, we started this show because there needed to be independent analysis. Now more than ever, with the Online Harms Act. Once that gets into law, it's been passed once by the House, there are going to be hundreds of bureaucrats censoring the news in Canada, censoring this show. We need to keep it on the air. Thanks for your support.